Council President Bass, I think your by community and nonprofit business consultant Dwayne Akins, Oakland City Council President Nikki Bass, Council Member Noel Gallo, and Vice Mayor Malia Vela. Welcome and thank you all for joining us this evening. I'm just going to give a brief moment for every single one of you to introduce yourselves, to tell those viewers who are watching at home a little bit more about yourselves. And I'll start with President of Oakland City Council, Nikki Bass.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Nikki Fortunato Bass. I'm really proud to be serving as the Oakland City Council President and representative of District 2. It's a real honor and privilege to be here with all of you and those of you who are viewing us right now for a conversation to get to know Mia Bonta. Just briefly, I am championing a policy agenda that includes jobs, housing, public safety, and really supporting folks at the neighborhood level. And one of the reasons I'm supporting Mia, one of the many reasons, is because I know that she will be an effective partner with me in my work here in Oakland to ensure affordable housing, to ensure homelessness solutions, to really work to transform our public safety system. And I'm excited to talk about those issues tonight. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Council President Bass, and I'm going to hand it over to Dwayne Akins.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dwayne Akins, Oakland native, HBCU alum, Xavier represent, and I run my own nonprofit. I sit on several leadership boards here in the city. I'm a sugar tax commissioner, former Pratt commissioner, was on the board of directors for Keep Oakland Beautiful 6 years, currently on BARC, Title VI Environmental Justice Advisory Commission. And the list is going to get heavier because I just got invited to participate in 2 more things. But I am a proud advocate for education, nonprofit business development, grassroots movement, the first generation to do something new and unique for your community, for your family. And I'm supporting Mia simply because during COVID, when they first graduated, the alums of the Oakland Promise, she sent me such a heartfelt note about why the words that I said was so important and it resonated with her. And fast forward to this year, it takes a bold person, somebody with unique savvy and charisma to run for state assembly. I think we need somebody that's going to unify the Bay Area for sure, especially Alameda, San Leandro, and Oakland, and not really focus in such a non-partisan lens. And so I feel like Mia has the connections, the network, and the knowledge to go to Sacramento and on day one, lead by example. So that's why I'm rocking with Mia this go round.
Ooh, I appreciate that, Dwayne. And the heart. She got the heart and the passion. And next we have Vice Mayor of Alameda, Malia Vela.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm excited to be here for a number of reasons. I've known Mia for quite a long time. and we've been personal friends, professional allies, and worked on many different things together in the city of Alameda. I am the vice mayor of the city of Alameda, but I'm also a product of this district. I was born in Alameda, raised in San Leandro, went to high school in Oakland, and I've been an educator in Oakland for almost 6 years now. So, and I do a lot of work in Oakland. So I think, I know this district well. I know what this district needs. It needs somebody who's going to be able to be a strong advocate, who's going to be able to deliver on issues that I've worked on with Mia in the city of Alameda, making sure that we are responding in a responsible manner to the COVID-19 pandemic, making sure that we are taking care of our most vulnerable, making sure that we build things like a wellness center, even if it's in our backyard, which it is right in my backyard and in Mia's backyard as well. Making sure that we address our affordable housing crisis, making sure that we're addressing homelessness and building more housing. So those are all issues Mia has actually worked on. She's delivered on. It's not just a campaign slogan. It's not just about saying the right answer in a forum. It's about actually delivering on these issues. And I know that she's going to do it for the residents of District 18. So that's why I'm with her.
Thank you so much. And Mia's here, and I figured there's not much introduction, but we'd love for you to tell the viewers that are in their cars, they're in front of their laptops, maybe they're still at work watching this live, a little bit more about your upbringing and why you are running for state assembly.
Thank you so much. And I just want to thank you, all of you powerful leaders, Shay, Nikki, Dwayne, Malia, Noel, who will join us soon, for being a part of this conversation. It's an honor to kind of be a part of a group of change makers who have been working for so long and so passionately around many of the common issues that we care deeply about, and working with our community, most importantly. I come to this work as somebody who, dog's going to start. Oh no. As somebody who's who's experienced poverty, who's experienced what it means to have many transitions in one's life, who's experienced the need to be able to focus on educational opportunity, and I've come to this work working with my community over so many years, and I really wanted this opportunity during this campaign to be able to highlight so many of the leaders who we have in this district, who are a part of the solutions, who have worked every single day, who really, quite frankly, have the answers that we need. I think the role of a state representative for this district in particular is just to be able to create the space, create the opportunity, create the connection and the collaboration so that leaders who are in the advocacy space, who are elected, who are part of our nonprofit sector have the ability to know that someone's got their back in Sacramento fighting for them, and making sure that the things that we want together can actually happen. So thanks all for being in our space together. And unfortunately, I think you're going to hear a lot of my dog Lego for a moment.
For those at home watching live, our disclaimer is we are all in the comfort of our own homes. We are real people living real lives, and we're going to have real moments in this live this evening. So please be patient and enjoy the show. So my first question is going to go to Council President Bass and Vice Mayor Vea and Mia. Affordable housing has been a critical issue during the pandemic, discussed so much during this election. Let's talk about that. Council President Bass and Vice Mayor Vela, what are some of the greatest barriers to affordable housing in your cities? And Mia, what do you think the state can do about it? I know.
I'll kick us off.
Yes, please.
So Mia and I had a great conversation about our housing crisis. And one of the things about Oakland is that we have to deliver on a number of strategies. And the framework we're dealing with is that we are well beyond our goal in terms of market rate housing, but we're so below on deeply affordable housing. And of course, one of the ways we can get there is by building and creating new housing. But here in Oakland, one of the things that people don't realize is that 88% of our housing stock is smaller buildings of 25 units or less that people are renting. That's a lot of the housing in my district, in District 2. And I have been able for many years to partner with groups that do organizing, land trusts, to actually purchase those homes with tenants who are potentially being displaced because rents go up every year. So partnering, a land trust partnering with tenants to actually purchase their homes, their buildings, and make sure those homes are actually permanently affordable. And when Councilmember Gallo joins us, he'll be able to talk about a building that was purchased recently in his district using this strategy. So Mia and I talked about how in my first few months in office, I was able to create a $12 million fund so that tenants could purchase their homes with land trusts and co-ops and make them permanently affordable and promote community ownership. And one of the things I think is really important for our AD 18 representative to do is partner with us to deliver on more strategies so that we have a permanent funding source for that particular strategy, because that means we can permanently stop displacement by allowing people to become homeowners together with land trusts and co-ops. So Mia, maybe you could talk a little bit about the work that we talked about with land trusts and that strategy of acquisition and preservation, which doesn't get a lot of airtime, but it's a really core strategy to making sure people are not displaced and can actually stay in their home and actually own their home.
Absolutely, and I'd love for Vice Mayor Vela to speak as well to this issue. She's been a leader in the city of Alameda and actually has a land trust deal as well. So maybe we can talk about that, and then I'm happy to ask questions and pipe in.
We're working really hard. Similarly, in the city of Alameda, I think that historically Alameda has had a lot to overcome to really try to be welcoming to the diverse population that we have, and to make sure that everyone really does belong here. And so, you know, Mia, we've worked side by side on things like making sure that there are real, meaningful tenant protections in place. That's really critical. I want to see the state step up. I know you do too. And something that's very deeply personal to you. So if you could talk about that aspect of things. But really, it's about making sure that we're doing two things, right? One is keeping people housed, because we know that if there's further displacement and once somebody is in that very vulnerable, unhoused situation, it's very difficult, costs more. It's just very ineffective to address things from that end. So how do we keep people housed, especially during the pandemic? And then the second thing is, how do we build multi-generational wealth? And that's really what we're talking about when we talk about community land trusts. The city of Alameda is certainly trying to utilize some of the funding that the state has provided in this last budget cycle to see that become a reality, and to make sure that we also have transitional housing. So I think we're doing all these things. Mia, you were also working with us very hard on making sure that we have stronger inclusionary housing language in the city of Alameda, getting rid of our cumbersome charter amendments that have resulted in redlining, essentially. So I think, how do we address these things statewide is really the issue. You know them firsthand because you've been dealing with them in the city of Alameda. But I think if we can get rid of these exclusionary zoning provisions, really partnering with the state, that'll help with the affordable housing. I know you know that, but if you could talk about your plans at the state level to really help us see that. And I think coming from Alameda and having that to talk about that experience of what it's meant for the city that you live in is so important when you go to legislate, because it's personal experience, and that's going to convince a lot of people who are on the fence.
Thanks, both of you. I've shared several times the reality that as a child growing up, I actually moved 13 times in 16 years. And sometimes I've gotten to talk about what the nature of some of those moves were. Some of them were due to landlords who felt too comfortable using their master key to let themselves into the home of a single mother and her daughter. Sometimes it was that we, I'd break out into a rash, and the likelihood of that rash coming from exposure to lead or to rodents was a reality that was not acceptable to my mother, and so we would move. Some of those were, so one move was because the rent suddenly overnight got increased 15 to 20%, and there was nothing that we could do about it. And so when I think about the fact that a lot of some of what we're experiencing in terms of our homeless population are people who are stories just like mine, who have found themselves on the wrong side of a bad deal, and who didn't have the resources or wherewithal or connections or network or safety net to be able to do anything but find themselves in a situation that just starts to spiral out of control. And so for me, is the work that we've been able to do. And actually, I'll share one other move I remember was not being able to get an apartment because my mother showed up one day, and the property manager said, yes, we have an apartment. And then she showed up the next day with a little brown-skinned girl who was a little bit too dark, and all of a sudden that apartment was gone. That level of housing discrimination are all things that I know all too well. And so when I see things like in the cities of Alameda, San Leandro, and Oakland that are representative of that reality, it stings. And I think that that's caused me to lean in, particularly in Alameda, where we have their exclusionary single-family zoning that has cemented in redlining and discrimination and bias into our housing practices. Like, that's something that we have to do something about. And in cities where we have a progressive majority on city councils to be able to fight it, like we have had with Vice Mayor Vela and Council Member John Knox White and our mayor, it's possible to do something, like to make some change. But if you don't have the full city council, then it becomes something that individual electeds can't fight on their own. And then we put forward ballot measures, and then NIMBYs take over, and those housing measures don't get passed to be able to combat that. And so I think the role of the state is to really just stop it, to not allow it, right? To be able to put our foot down and to create the space to be able to make it so that progressive leaders in their cities have the tools, the framework, the resources to be able to help them combat housing discrimination and housing practices that keep us from being able to promote things that would afford us the ability to build more affordable housing. And we have with us Council Member Noel Gallo here. Do we want to do a hello to him?
Yes, please. I was going to welcome him and have a quick hello before we go on to the next question with Dwayne.
But I will just say, Council President Bass, I think one of the things that you have been able to successfully explore, and Alameda has as well, is the notion of being able to really set up land trusts quite frankly, I think one of the things that is very low-hanging fruit for the state to be able to do is just invest more resources in our state budgets to be able to allow for land trusts to be something that are more commonly accessible, to perhaps think about setting up opportunities for there to be some parameters that really focus the development of those land trusts with people who are typically and commonly disenfranchised and disempowered and don't have the ability to build the generational wealth that allows them to be able to support their families ongoingly. I think we have a way to be able to just, again, like I don't need to recreate the wheel. I need to look at progressive leaders who are already there and say, what do you need? How can we get there? Let's do it. Let's structure the legislation that we need. Let's fight for it together. Let's put the pressure on other legislators across the state to make it happen. And let's stand strong, because I think this district, that's the role of this district. It's not only the role of this legislator, it's the role of this district to hold that progressive line and really push for the change that we need in critical areas like housing. So I'm really looking forward to working on those with you.
All right, well, since we have Councilmember Gallo, do you want to do a quick introduction before we go on to the next question?
You're on mute.
You're actually on mute.
Okay, how about now?
Great.
Okay, great. Well, good evening to all of you, and thank you for the invitation. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here in support of Mia on her election to the Assembly. I think it's going to happen. I was today over at Nob Hill, buying a lunch for my daughter, and I ran into a family, and they ran into a family from the neighborhood here, and first thing they asked me, Mr. Geyer, who should I vote for for the Assembly? And as well, there's this lady named Mia Bonta. You ought to take a look and vote for her. And so, absolutely, we'll vote for Mia. So I think you're going to do well. But anyways, thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. So this next question is going to be for Dwayne and Mia. You both dedicate your career to youth development and education. Let's talk about some of the work you've done, changes that you'd like to see in our education system, and what do you think the state can be doing about it at this time?
So, very great question. What I've done in my career is I started a grassroots nonprofit org. We're contracted with the Oakland Unified School District, and we sit in several other community youth development spaces. I think it really needs to factor into going all the way back to creative learning and understanding that all people learn different, and really figuring out unique ways to educate the whole child. We also need to reimagine our elementary schools, who's working at our elementary schools, what type of instructor is there. I really believe that we need to make sure that we have folks that understand early childhood development, special ed, and stop thinking that special education means that you have a learning disability. Special ed just means that you just think a little outside the box and you're a little extra, but that don't mean that you can't read, that don't mean that you can't write. And so I'm right now working on my dissertation in leadership development and curriculum instruction, and I'm going to focus a small case study on that specific issue, just reimagining public school for Black males, because we don't get to be able to emote. Like Black males don't get to kick over a chair in kindergarten. They get sent to the principal office and criminalized, whereas some of our white counterparts, they get to kick over a chair being a male in the kindergarten, and he's just having a bad day. So we have to get to a place to where we understand and recognize our own personal biases and understand what we bring into the classroom, and we work to educate the whole child. Looking at the pandemic, I feel like we really need to think, do our young people really need to be in a classroom doing 8 hours of just hard academic instruction? We may need to reimagine what the school day looks like, and we also may need to look like, what does youth development facilities look like? We have kids that are idle time. I tell a story all the time. We have individuals that get off of work, and they're working till 11 o'clock, and their kids, they don't have anywhere safe to go. So maybe some of the youth development centers need to stay open later. We also need more activities for our young people to do, meaning some state-of-the-art arcades, things to keep kids engaged. I don't like going to Plank all the time because it's very expensive, but I love it. So if I think it's expensive, I can only imagine what a teenager thinks about Plank. So we definitely have to reimagine education, reimagine what youth development looked like in a new age, figure out what curriculum looked like, because we really need to make sure that we teach our young people how to prepare for the next wave of this new word that we like to call gentrification. How do our young people in the East Bay be able to compete with individuals from outside our area?
Of Dwayne, that you...
I froze.
Oh, it's okay.
I froze, but you heard.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. You're frozen.
But I froze.
You hit on my passion points, and that really have been my passion since I graduated from college. I had the benefit of working in a youth development program that actually had called LEAP in Connecticut, that had high school students pairing with college students, working with 7 to 14-year-olds, and it was the start of a cradle to career, youth-led, youth-driven movement that ended up being one of the largest AmeriCorps programs at the time, and certainly the largest in the state of Connecticut. And I definitely attribute my focus on youth development and education to those early experiences and the model that was used. I think, Dwayne, when you talk about the whole child, like that is, that's been really my ongoing just question, the question of a lifetime, I should say. How do we make sure that our systems stop siloing our children? Our children don't come with the assets and the opportunities and the needs that they have when, today I'm talking to you about housing, and tomorrow I'm going to talk to you about your healthcare, and the next day I'm going to talk to you about what your educational plan should look like. Our children come to us in all of who they are with a need for us to be able to recognize that the systems that they need to be tied to really need to be connected. So I really appreciate the work that Oakland has been doing for a long time around community schools, which is a movement that I was a part of, like literally 25 years ago in the state of Connecticut, and seeing it kind of come out in more recent years. And Oakland has been, I think, something to really build on. What happened during COVID was that our children lost their ability to be able to have access. Vice Mayor Vela and I worked on making sure that students had food. I've worked at Oakland Promise in partnership with the Oakland Undivided initiative to be able to ensure that when the schools closed down, students actually had access to Wi-Fi connectivity and laptops, and President Bass and Councilmember Gallo have been a part of that. When we closed down our schools, we closed down students' access to critical basic needs, pre-K 16, and that was an awakening for us in terms of what needs to happen and how we need to be able to resource our schools. Certainly, one issue is just making sure that there's more funding to be able to support. It is the reality that California has gone through a state of defunding our educational systems for far too long. But we also need to use the funds that we have more wisely. And we also need to make sure that we're supporting our educators who, are frontline workers. And today, our frontline workers, making sure to be able to support our students in that. So I think for the state, nearly 40 to 50% of the general fund of the state budget goes towards education. And I know that we can use those dollars more wisely to make sure that there's a seamlessness of the experience for what children have when they go to school, when they interact with their youth development programs, when they interact with their healthcare systems that are situated within their schools. And schools are great hubs to be able to do that. I think we need more of that. And I think we need to encourage our cities and our school districts to be able to have students get the resources that they need. And I think there needs to be some accountability tied to that. There's a lot of compliance in our school systems, more than any educator ever would want to be able to have to manage. And quite frankly, it's stifling. But I think for us, the accountability really comes in being able to talk with community. And whenever we have an opportunity to hear from parents, community members, community organizations about the things that are going right and about the things that are going wrong, and how we can fix those, those are the conversations that we need to be encouraging. You don't need legislation for that, but you do need a bully pulpit. And I think one of the roles of a legislator is to be able to encourage and convene different kinds of conversations. And I'm really looking forward to being able to bring together our leaders in the education space and the youth space to be able to have those critical conversations. And if it leads to legislation that we need to work on together, like I've been able to participate in over the years, that's wonderful. But quite frankly, I think we just need to be talking more with each other.
I know that Vice Mayor Vela needs to go, and she has something she wants to say before she does, and then I'm going to hand it over for you, Councilmember Gallo, to respond to that question as well.
Okay, thank you.
I've got two sick kiddos, so unfortunately I have to cut this a little bit shorter than I had anticipated tonight, but it was really important for me to be here to show my support for me and Bonta, and make sure that folks know where I stand and why I stand there. And you know, I've worked with Mia in a concrete way on so many really key pieces of legislation at the local level and also at the state level. In my day job, I represent working families. I represent workers from the Teamsters Union, many of whom live in this district. And what I can tell you is I fight every day to make sure that those workers have health care and that their families have health care, to make sure that they get a good wage. To support their families. But that is all for nothing if we don't have a legislator who is going to be from this district fighting for working people, to make sure that they have safe working conditions, to make sure that they have respect on the job, to make sure that when I fight for those pay increases, it doesn't all go towards to the landlord for rent that's continuing to go up, to make sure that we do eventually get to a place where we have health care for all, so that I'm not negotiating against myself every time I have to go in and ask for more because the premiums for healthcare have gone up. So I'm also a mom. I serve with Councilmember Gallo on our lead abatement JPA. I know Mia is a mom. I know how passionate she is for our children and what a fighter she's going to be for them. I think it's really important that we have somebody that has that lived experience, somebody who knows what it's like to be a parent worrying about making sure that your child gets the best health care possible, not having to worry about what color your child's skin is when you go into the ER, making sure that you have access to all of those things, regardless of your race, your ethnicity, your creed, whatever. So I know because I know Mia, and that's why I'm supporting her wholeheartedly. And I really hope that folks turn their ballots in. Your voice is through your vote. So please turn it in, vote for Mia Bonta. That's who I'll be voting for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leah, and thank you for being with us. I know it's all the more precious given what you have going on, that you took the time out to be a part of this conversation. I'm really thankful to you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, and best luck for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Now I'll turn that question over to Councilmember Gallo when we talk about education.
Thank you. I want to second everything Malia said, and I appreciate her work and effort in the city of Alameda. Look, the reality is this. I think we have to accept the fact that Oakland is in Alameda County. Oakland is in the state of California. Oakland is in the United States of America. And those of us that are elected officials, sometimes we play against each other or we compete against each other. And I've seen too many times people from the state do that. Oakland, I grew up here in East Oakland and attended the local schools and still raised my family here in Oakland, in East Oakland. And, it seems that every day in East Oakland, there's an emergency. But even when it came to the pandemic, to the COVID-19 issue, Alameda County had an issue in terms of providing the public health necessary at the beginning. And we had to advocate to get La Clinica and the Native American Health Center to be part of that. The state of California does the same thing. We talk about education, and for me growing up here, it used to be at one time that the libraries were open every Sunday and Saturday. That's where I did my homework, because doing my homework at home was not a cool thing to do. And I was embarrassed to do it, so I had to run out of my house to do my homework. And at the same time, our schools' gymnasiums were open. You can go play football, baseball, basketball on Friday evenings. And for those of us that were hoodies, we had something to do, somewheres to go. But now you got them all fenced up, locked up. And some people were doing a lot of talking. And so I think that the reality when it comes to government, we need to recognize cities and neighborhoods that have great challenges. We do a lot of talk about race and equity, but it's not about what you say, but what you do. And certainly we recognize from the pandemic to the public safety to the housing, employment, that, certain neighborhoods do have emergencies and we need to address those. And that's what I would ask our representatives at the state level, because a lot of times we do more talking and policy direction, and even at the council we do that, than really getting to the heart of the matter and addressing the specific needs we have when it comes to housing, when it comes to lead in the paint, because it's clearly as an example that clearly has been demonstrated by the studies we conducted that Oakland, 70% of the housing stock was experiencing the lead in the paint issue. But yet we're arguing with the county. The county is saying, well, you should only get 30% of it, when clearly the data demonstrates that Oakland has a greater need. But there's sometimes lack of cooperation within government. And that's what I would advocate for. And I support Mia, that I think you would be open to working with the city of Oakland, addressing the specific needs. My priority certainly is education. And secondly, that, I don't need to talk about homelessness because it's all over. But the minute I cross the bridge to Alameda, it's a whole different environment. I don't see the trash, I don't see the dumping, I don't see the homelessness, and certainly I don't see the blood in the streets that I see in Oakland, West Oakland. So I think that in reality, government, because I am a taxpayer, is supporting, paying for Mia's salary, paying for the council's salary, paying for the supervisor's salary, and I would expect that government would attend to the families and children in our neighborhoods as well. And the other one that's, people, the question was regarding beautification, but that's part of public safety. When people see a clean, safe neighborhood, it's an attraction for my children and family to respect where they live. But at the same time, if I want to attract customers to my businesses, you got to have a clean, safe environment. Otherwise, the people ain't coming. And so we got to maintain that so we can create jobs for our neighbors as well. But I'm open to working directly with Mia Bonta at the assembly level, and I am in contact with our lobbyists, Nicolo and so forth. And Mia, I'll share one experience, that disappointment after another, and trying to work with the assembly, even when it comes to prostitution. Because I had gone before the assembly, the public safety committee, basically enforcing the rules or strengthen the policy when it comes to prostitution, because young women are being violated daily on the streets. You know it, I see it, but we're allowing that behavior to occur. And I went to the state assembly and I recommended, well, if I catch the John picking up the girl, and we know who they are, then I need to keep your car. And certainly I'll have a lot of explaining, telling my wife what happened to my car. And until you take drastic measures, but they said that was unconstitutional. Your state assembly, public safety, said we couldn't do that. But at the other side, we're talking about how much we love and value women, want to protect the young ladies, and protect everybody. And we allow the behavior that's happened here on International for years, and the human trafficking that's occurring. But we all of a sudden have, as leadership, we don't take enough strong actions to say we're not going to tolerate that. Mr. Gallo, we catch you doing that, we're keeping your vehicle.
You know what, Mr. Gallo?
And until you do that, we're just going to be talking about it, feeling sorry and taking different action. But please don't forget East and West Oakland. We have emergencies and we do need the resources, and we don't want to wait to the federal government. All of a sudden they locate trillions of dollars, when they could have been supporting these neighborhoods all along. Thank you, and I'll answer any questions.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Gallo. And I want to actually give it to also Council President Bass on the beautification as well, because I know that you work hard in this area too. I drive through Oakland as well, and I think that the investment has to also be in how we see ourselves. Yep. And if we don't invest in our community, why should they? Yep. I'm huge on beautification and in environmental and urban developments, but I would love to see Council President Bass, the work that you want, and then Mia chime in. I think they're saying, how can the state support this work and find the funding to make sure that this district is beautiful?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, our district is really blessed, and we're all blessed to be here in the East Bay, the Bay Area, because we have the natural beauty of all three of our cities in the district. We've got the ocean and the mountains not too far away. One really concrete thing is that here in Oakland, we are working to invest in our parks. We have a bond measure that was passed several years ago that's allowing us in my district to invest in the Lincoln Recreation Center, the most utilized rec center in all of Oakland. It's in Chinatown, downtown, with all of those, new high rises coming online, more people moving into downtown. We actually need to update our rec center. We need to build up. And the Chinatown Lincoln community has been incredibly active in getting community input, designing, fundraising. And with Oakland's investment, we are for the second time applying for state funding through Prop 68, so that we have some matching funds to do a multi-million-dollar recreation that will really allow Oaklanders to use our park facilities. And Mia, you and I have talked about public safety and really broadening out the definition of what public safety is. Of course, it's effective and accountable policing, but it's also making sure, and Councilmember Gallo and I have talked about this, making sure our parks, for example, are open. There's programming, they can be used. We've got basketball and other games happening for multiple generations. And so the state, I think, is a critical resource in terms of making sure that our parks are activated, that our young people as well as our elders have spaces to go. So I'd love to continue that partnership with you in the seat, and also continue to strategize around how we invest in our infrastructure, our parks, our libraries. Those are critical things to making sure that our communities have some of the basics to meet their needs, to learn, to recreate and enjoy. And that's part of a broader public safety strategy that I think is really important.
Yeah, I think both of you are raising such a critical issue around equity and the distribution of resources. And I think one of the challenges that we have, at all levels of government, but particularly at the state, is that we take these snapshots, right? And then we assume that allocation of dollars within that particular snapshot is going to be able to alleviate and address the issues that are really like generational and legacy issues that are over decades. I think one of the things that we need to get focused on is calling it like it is at the state level in terms of the distribution of dollars through grant programs that we have, to recognize that we do need to proactively over invest in order to be able to just come close to, at any given moment right now, in order to just be able to come close to actually addressing the decades of deferred investment that has been made, particularly in different communities throughout the state, but particularly in parts of Oakland and in Oakland in general. Because if we don't do that, we're actually never going to be. We'll just continue to defer maintenance, because we're never going to actually be providing enough resources to be able to adequately address any particular need. One of the things that I learned along the way, being a little too close to the sausage making to the legislature for the last 10 years, is the state actually has a very critical role to play in being held accountable to the beautification efforts and to the cleanup efforts of all of our cities, because there will be streets and zones that are entirely the state's responsibility to be able to get to clean up. And I know that Councilmember Gallo, you've been working very, very hard in East Oakland to be able to address it, and the Fruitvale area. And I just think that the state needs to step up and recognize that it has mutual responsibility to be able to address some of the blight and the dumping that we have experiencing in Oakland. And that's you will find a partner with me every single day to be able to work on that. And you have to have you got to be loud sometimes. Like you got to be loud. You got to be pointed. You got to be able to have those conversations time and time again, so that people don't forget that the need that we have in Oakland and in this district, in particular areas, is a legacy of being forgotten. And in order to be able to make sure that we're not forgotten, we need to stand true to making sure that we're having those resources. So looking at things like how the Prop 68 funds are actually distributed, where are they going, how much from an equity lens are those resources going to communities with the highest need or that with the most ongoing deferred maintenance. Those are the kinds of things that I want to be able to roll up sleeves and get in and look at.
Yeah, wow. I'm just going to say thank you, all three of you, for the work that you've done in this area. I know that many community members don't know how to address it, so they lean and they elect you to do the good work of the community. If there isn't any more follow-up to that question, I would like to maybe answer some of the pre-submitted questions that were given, and I will address them to Mia, but I also give it for President Bass and Councilmember Gallo to chime in. So the first question we had, where do you stand on the reopening? And how do you plan to address issues like learning loss and mental health issues students are facing after a year of distance? And Dwayne, you too, please.
Yeah, I welcome our schools reopening. And certainly, it has had the greatest impact on neighborhoods that were already impacted in terms of education. And certainly, even before the pandemic, some of my high schools in East Oakland, their attendance rate was 50%. So we weren't going to school to begin with. And then the pandemic hit, and I'll share with you just briefly some of the experiences with some of the youngsters that I know and families that, as an example, and I've had working with many volunteers from the neighborhood, is some of their children that were not promoted to the next grade level. One is because they didn't have the technology at home to do or the laptop, or didn't have the discipline to do that. So at the end, what I was getting feedback from mom and dad was, well, my son was not being promoted and he's upset. What can I do to that? But at the same time, by the fact he didn't do his schoolwork, we've received letters from the welfare department saying that they're going to stop the welfare because your son didn't go to school. And so it became an effort working with the welfare department and working with the education system to make sure that we continue to support the family. And but having I recognize the need for safety, and I, working with the superintendent and the county, reach those resolutions. But I do want to see our children back in school, because the reality is that some of us fall further behind. And you can clearly see the public safety issue that's occurring.
Yep.
Even with some of our high schools now here in Oakland, we had shootings within the high schools returning back to school. So we need to get our schools in a training center, an education center, and get them back active and get our schools to be positive. And so I support our kids returning back to school.
Okay.
And I'll jump in there. I really think that when we're talking about this whole reopening, that we have to hold our education leaders accountable. Right? Voters have to make sure that they know how to communicate in charge, because we've seen some things happen in education that is just unsustainable. Our young people, we see it already in Oakland. You got the gentrification, you got the housing issues, and you got kids, young adults, some people even my age, 39, that I went to school with, that can't compete right now. And so we have to ask, what happened academically? And now we're seeing this pandemic hit, and kids that were already behind, now they're back in school and they missed a whole year, and Lord knows some of their attendance rates, so they're really behind. Right. And I would really love to see some legislation passed when it comes to our school board, especially I can speak from Oakland, to where those individuals need to get paid a salary to do that job. And when they take that job, they need to put whatever businesses they have to the side. Oakland is one of the largest school districts in California, and we have so many issues. And people ask me, are you going to run for school board? I said no, because I got to take care of myself. I can't realistically do a great job as a school board member, as a volunteer, dedicating 2 or 3 hours to that, when that job really is a 40+ hour job a week, and weekend, and crisis management. So when we're talking about education, reopening schools, we got to have realistic forecast models. I know Oakland's a very liberal space, but we have to have realistic plans and phase plans before we just shut stuff down, before we just pull stuff out of schools. We have to have realistic dialogue and learn how to talk to each other and articulate the mission and vision for our school district. And when you're in any place in Alameda County, all of the school districts should look like. I remember before the pandemic, I was contracted doing some work out in Fremont Unified School District. The elementary campus that I was on, it had fresh fruit growing on campus. It had a park up the street, beautiful, clean, green park. And inside the school, it had a whole nother park. And I was just like, whoa, could you imagine if the old school Webster Academy that's connected to Arroyo Park, if it's the same size, but if Arroyo was clean and beautiful all the time, if the campus was beautiful. So we really have to, when we talk about equity don't just look like what happens downtown Lake area. That needs to be universal across Oakland. It needs to look alike, and it needs to be even universal across Alameda County. Alameda County needs to look alike. So that's what
You know what, Dwayne, you're so right. My kids went to that school district, and they actually have, farm to plate programs designed with the assistance of large, organizations and government agencies to make sure those kids have fresh food. And it's something that could be duplicated definitely in the East Bay.
And something that Oakland OUSD actually has the foundation to be able to build on. I think one of the things I want to say about reopening, because this is obviously near and dear to my heart, I'm living it right now in two cities, in Oakland and Alameda, and also hearing what's going on in San Leandro all simultaneously through teachers and students and parents alike, is one thing that we can guarantee is that COVID is not done with us, and the pandemic is not done with us. And the level of disruption that we are going to experience as we still wrestle with the reality of this public health crisis is, we're going to be facing it the entirety of this year. And the impacts of that are going to be things that we feel for probably a decade, to be quite honest with you. So one thing I think I'm hoping that the state can focus in on is accounting for that disruption, giving school districts and school systems the tools that they need to, either by legislation, by budget distribution, to be able to account for the fact that we are going to, for the next several years, have an increased level of students in very different moments in their educational trajectory. Gone are the days where we can assume that a student is going to be able to go from one year to the next and and master what's happening and be able to move on to the next, because COVID is not giving us that opportunity. So I do agree, Dwayne, that we need to think differently about what that educational pathway looks like for students, particularly in Oakland. It's been a grace to be able to be a part of Oakland Promise and really have that kind of cradle to career continuum approach to supporting students. And Council President Bass and Council Member Gallo have been incredibly supportive of that initiative. And we need more thinking like that. They need to be thinking more about students moving through our education system at a different pace and with different mastery levels. And we need to acknowledge that. in the way that we're building out our system. So we have a lot of work to do at the state, and I'm very thankful that I have firsthand knowledge of what it looks like when the school district, the city, the county, and the state are working well together. And I have a lot of firsthand knowledge about when those systems are not actually working to the benefit of students in the way that they should. And that is an area that I want to be able to focus in on. Absolutely.
Well, I just want to say that this has been an amazing, amazing event. I've never met these two amazing council members and Dwayne personally, but Mia, you have a really good team here that's going to help you accomplish some great things in your district. And I'm excited to have been here this evening. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up and tell people about your special election and what they can do next to support you.
Great. Thank you. Oh, you want me to do that? Yes.
Tell them. Yeah.
No, I can do it. So this election ends on August 31st. We know right now that people have not voted. We know that there's the specter of the recall that we need to attend to. It's a different ballot. People need to make sure to vote for that. But the travesty of this moment will be if our communities, I'm sitting here looking at beautiful people, leaders, all of color, by the by, right? If our communities do not step up and use their voice to vote. And so what I hope that anybody who's in ear reach and is listening, are Democrats, just anybody who can make sure to talk to 5 friends and say to them, make sure to vote. And if you can, consider voting for Mia. Of course, I want that. And do it by August 31st. Make a plan to vote, get out the word. And if it takes guilt, really, because these are the moments, these are the quiet moments in our histories where we give up our power and where we give up our opportunity to be able to really contribute to what the vision for what we want our community, our state to look like. And so we need to inspire people, we need to guilt them, we need to do whatever it takes to make sure that they're getting out to vote by August 31st. And you can do that by just a good word of mouth and a good phone call, a good plate of food.
Phone bank, canvassing. I'll be phone banking tomorrow, canvassing over the weekend. I canvassed last weekend. So I'm going to leave this, just give you 30 seconds to Council President Bass, Councilmember Gallo, and Dwayne. If I can give you 30 seconds to close out. And thank you so much for coming, that you want to say to everyone that's watching at home or in their cars or on their phones.
Sure. So thank you for having me again as the council president of the Oakland City Council, representing District 2, where on the beautiful marquee of the Grand Lake Theater, you can see a message that says, "Vote Mia Bonta for Assembly." Super exciting to see that message on there in my district. I have to say that in my role as a city council member, I know that I need to be able to count on, in my role as a council member, I need to be able to count on our assembly member to partner with Oakland to leverage resources so that we can address the crisis of affordable housing, of homelessness, of making sure that we are transforming our public safety system to really work for all of our residents and keep our communities safe. And I know that Mia Bonta is someone who has a 2-decade track record, has the relationships to hit the ground running, to figure out how to partner with Oakland as well as Alameda and San Leandro to leverage those resources, and also to work with us to craft policy and partnership that will really advance what we know we need at the local level and help us as Oakland in particular continue to innovate. I'm really proud of what we represent as a city, proud of the work that we are doing as a council. And Mia, I know that you are going to be an effective partner for us to really drive forward an agenda for Oaklanders that can allow us to be the city that we know we can be, that really takes care of our children, our families, our workers. And that's why I have already turned in my ballot to support you. I've walked doors with you. I will be phone calling. And again, just really excited about you being willing as a mom, as someone who has so much experience, to do this level of public service. So thank you, Mia.
Yeah, Mia, I just want to congratulate you also. In this United States of America, education is number one. And knowing the work that you have done in Oakland, in Alameda, clearly you demonstrated that you know education. We got to take care of our children and families first. And certainly, I value the work that you have done. You know us well. You know what the needs are, and I strongly believe that you'll work directly with the city of Oakland in terms of meeting the emergencies that we have. And I'm ready to join your phone bank. Just give me a call, Shay, in terms of where can I go call? And I haven't joined you on a Saturday or Sunday because that's when I got my volunteers beautifying the neighborhood. So when the people from Alameda drive over to Fruitvale, they won't see a whole lot of mess going on because I get that feedback from the other side too. But thank you, and I'm ready to support you. And my daughter Amanda loves what you do. And so we're going to join you. Shay, you just tell us when and where.
Oh, I will.
And we'll join you, all right? Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm going to be really brief because we're at that 8 o'clock moment. But Dwayne Akins, your hometown hero, community advocate. And I want everybody that's listening, just make sure that you really vote and believe that you can participate in the process and just get engaged, focus. Actually, just take a page out of Mia's book and really just put your heart on the line. Because when I asked her, like, what inspired you to run? Like, what gave you the courage to finally do it? And she was like, I just knew it was time. So if you believe in yourself, trust yourself, if you see that vision and mission statement for yourself, get out there, make change, be the change, and rock with Mia Bonta and vote. Vote like your life depends on it. Vote.
Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Noel. Thank you, Nikki, Malia, and Shay for being the change makers that you are, for giving me a moment to be able to stand on your shoulders and to make sure that we have an opportunity to lift our community, and let's do this. Thank you all for everything that you've done. Take care.
Don't forget, vote Mia Bonta for State Assembly.